Welcome. My name is Amal Zaidan. I'm the president of Basic College Ministries at LIU Post. Before we begin, I'd like to thank New York Apologetics, more specifically Anthony Uvino, one of last year's speakers, and Nick Mitchell for their time invested in this event. Also, Vin Villoff, who is Basic's advisor, and for his hard efforts in Basic College Ministries. I'd also like to thank the whole Basic team for their tabling skills and their promotional work. A team is best when it works together, so thank you. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you, the audience, for attending and supporting an event that we feel is necessary in today's world. Which leads me to my next point. I'm pleased to be tonight's moderator for this age-old, yet still modern topic. My goal is to make sure the discussion runs smoothly and to keep time. I'm sure it will be an entertaining, yet informative evening. Both our speakers will attempt to show whether theism or atheism better accounts for origins, morality, and meaning. Representing atheism is freshman Adam Hornbuckle, a political science major at LIU Post. He's from East Hampton, New York, and is currently the freshman class vice president. Adam is a huge New York Rangers fan and loves to give back to community. Let's welcome Adam. Representing theism is Paul Raskello. Paul completed his undergrad at NYU in religious studies and history, and is now completing his master's in theology at St. John's University. He is a huge Lord of the Rings fan and loves Finland. Here are the guidelines for the rest of the evening. Both speakers will have a 3-minute opening statement. Following that, we'll begin the cross-examination at 5 minutes per topic, with 3 topics. After which, each speaker will have their closing remarks. Then we will have a 30-minute question and answer session from you, the audience. To make this easier, we have index cards and pens available at the front of the stage if you do have any questions, which we do encourage. Also, if you do have a question in the middle of the debate, take out your cell phone, write it down. I assure you, you will forget. There will be a lot of information being said. So at this time, I'd like to ask you all to silence all electronic devices, and if you could hold your applauses till the end of each speaker's time is up, or else you'd be taking away from their time. Now, we shall begin with their opening statements.
Yay. I'm actually a lot younger than I look. This is the product of No Shave November. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming out to this important event. You could do many other things on a Wednesday night and you decided to spend it with us. So we're honored. And hopefully it's worth your while. Our first topic, origins. Atheists have typically maintained that the universe is eternal. It exists uncaused and without a beginning. It was always here. This view was in response to the counterintuitive and unsubstantiated religious claim that God created the universe. If God created the universe, then the universe must have had a beginning. So atheists rejected the idea that the universe had a beginning in order to avoid the conclusion the universe needed a cause outside of itself. However, the extraordinary breakthroughs in physics and cosmology of the 20th century gave the world a reason to think otherwise. In 1917, a smart German dude with amazing hair published a paper on cosmology and the theory of relativity. Einstein noticed that his equations predicted an expanding universe. But surely that was impossible. So Einstein introduced an arbitrary force in his equations, which he called the cosmological constant, to compensate for the force of expansion and ensure that the universe was static and unexpanding. 12 years later, in an observatory outside of Los Angeles, the astronomer Edwin Hubble observed something strange through his telescope, that galaxies were moving away from us. His observation confirmed that the universe is moving outwards and expanding. Hubble invited Einstein to view the evidence for himself. Impressed by the observation, Einstein said, "I now see the necessity of a beginning." He then concluded the cosmological constant as the biggest blunder of his career. The universe really is expanding. And because the universe is expanding, we can know that the universe has a beginning. These discoveries are what led to the theory of what is now called the Big Bang. We understand that the universe originated about 13.8 billion years ago. The implications of this scientific evidence are clear, so much so that some scientists even ridiculed the Big Bang as creationist propaganda. John Maddox, the physics editor of the journal Nature, wrote an article in 1989 entitled "Down with the Big Bang." Other physicists also pushed against the Big Bang theory because they were aware of its implications. A universe with a beginning means a universe that has a cause. Alexander Vilenkin, a leading cosmologist, puts it this way: with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. This is where I'd like to put forward my first argument. The universe began to exist. Whatever begins to exist has a cause, therefore the universe has a cause. The conclusion follows logically from the premises, and it seems both premises are true. We've already seen that the universe has a beginning. Contemporary science points to that. And it also seems true that whatever begins to exist has a cause, because out of nothing, nothing comes. A universe cannot come from nothing, because by nothing, we mean no power, no property, no potentiality, no ability, nothing whatsoever. To say that something can come from nothing is absurd. It seems obvious that whatever begins to exist must have a cause. The universe cannot come from nothing without a cause. So the universe is all of time, space, matter, and energy, so it must follow that whatever caused the universe cannot be any of these things. The cause must be timeless, not made of matter, powerful enough to create a universe, and these are the qualities that theists have traditionally attributed to God. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank everyone for coming out on this cold night. I'd like to start by addressing his final point that something cannot come from nothing. I would disagree. Now, the scientific theory is to test. It's impossible to test if something can come from nothing. So therefore, it's impossible to disprove scientifically, of course. So to make the assertion that something cannot come from nothing really isn't based on facts. Now, let's see. Origins. Where did we come from? Where did all this come from? Well, I'm going to start from the beginning and just give you the facts. Let you fill in the blanks. About 13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang occurred, and the universe was born. Within a nanosecond, it's a nanosecond, the Big Bang expanded matter from the head of a pin to the observable universe that we see today. We have immense amounts of proof that this happened. For example, Einstein's theory of relativity proves that the universe is still expanding to this day, as he touched upon. Another fact of evidence comes from the quantum theory of study of stars. Now you see, stars hold an abundance of hydrogen and helium. I'm not sure exactly how much each, but hydrogen and helium, those are abundant. And through amazingly hot temperatures, they produce other elements like carbon or what have you. Now this information comes into play when considering in 1948, George Gamow asked, if all of the energy in the universe is crammed into one point, what would happen? He calculated it would be too hot for atoms to exist at about 10 billion degrees. And all that could exist was raw energy. He knew that after a Big Bang, energy would cool, and the energy would become matter per Einstein's theory of E equals mc squared. He found that such conditions should result in a universe filled with 75% hydrogen and 25% helium. This, of course, corresponding to the quantum theory evidence of stars being made up of hydrogen and helium. So therefore, these two factors make sense and can be displayed. Now on to the origins of the Earth. The Earth is about 4.5 billion with a B, years old, and scientists believe that it occurred randomly when amino acids combined in these bubbling pools, and we were formed. Humans were formed, well, not humans, but life forms. Now on to us, human beings as we know it today. We evolved into us, and evolution is a fact and not a theory. About 100,000 years ago, we lived in Africa, and since have been evolving and migrating. Now, there's many other theories as to why life has come into existence on Earth. However, it would make sense that if something could not come from nothing, that we would evolve. For instance, we cannot be placed here the wave of a finger. Thank you.
We will now begin the cross-examination.
Can I start?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually didn't disagree with anything of what you said, except for the first statement that you made, something cannot come from nothing is not a fact, because we can't observe it scientifically. Are you saying that the only things we can know with certainty are those that can be scientifically proven?
That's correct.
Can you prove that you are not in the matrix right now?
It's a silly question. Of course I can.
All right, so there are things that we accept as knowledge, even though we can't prove them scientifically.
Right, I don't see your point. I mean, there's a lot of things we can't prove scientifically
Well,
because they're unobservable.
Well, but you just said that we can't have knowledge if it's not scientifically proven. But then you gave an example of something that you believe without scientific evidence for it. So that being that you know that you're not in the matrix now. You can't prove that scientifically, but you know that that's true.
I don't know I'm not in the matrix. I could very well be in the matrix. What I was saying is I have no way to prove that.
But you believe that you are not in the matrix. You live and act as if the external world is real, even though you have no shred of scientific evidence for that.
Well, first you'd have to define the matrix, the movie.
The matrix, or a brain in the vat being stimulated, how do you know the external world is real? How do you know the past wasn't made 5 minutes ago and implanted into your brain with
I have no
19
proof.
years of memories?
I have no proof of any of that,
Right.
and I can't say yes or no.
But you live on the assumption that it's true, that the
Well,
external world is real.
I don't think about that, to be quite honest with you.
So you accept something is true. You don't challenge it, even though there's no scientific evidence for it.
Well, it's never been challenged before. You challenging me right now is the first time it's been brought up. However,
Okay, so
it's an obscure question that certainly makes you think. However, I have no proof to say yes or no.
okay, so we've concluded that there are things that we can know, even though there's no scientific evidence for them. And this is one of them. That something cannot come from nothing. Are you saying that nothing, by definition, no potentiality, no ability, no property, nothing whatsoever can bring about the universe? Is that your view?
Well, the universe is brought about by condensed energy and heat.
Well,
That is the belief, not
before that.
nothing.
Right, well, before that. The creation of the energy, the creation of
There-
that sphere of intense, dense, the singularity.
There is no before that in my mind.
So
Because
there was
to
no
me-
creation of time? Are you saying that there's no creation of time? Because we understand that 13.8 billion years ago, that was the finite beginning point where time actually began.
Correct.
So that time had a beginning.
Certainly.
So you agree that all reality has a beginning, because we know from the theory of relativity that time, space, matter, and energy are inextricably linked.
Correct.
Okay, so before that, or to sum it up, what is it that brought the universe into existence? You're saying that it came about, you agree that it's finite, it's 13.8 billion years ago, and so if it's finite, that means that it had a beginning. And by definition, something that has a beginning must have a cause, because nothing cannot be an agent, because nothing has nothing.
Right, well let me clarify. The Big Bang happened 13.8 billion years ago. I can't speculate what happened before that, I wasn't there. Now where that energy came from, and where that very condensed energy and heat came from, I couldn't say, and as a matter of fact, nobody else could say, because there is no way to scientifically test that.
Okay, but you're saying the universe has a beginning, you agree to that.
I cannot agree to that.
Then what is the Big Bang for you?
Are you saying the observable universe, or the universe being Big Bang and before?
Even in the multiverse, all of reality had a beginning, yes or no?
I cannot say yes or no. However, I can say the observable universe was started 13.8 billion years ago when the
Okay,
Big Bang occurred.
and did that have a cause?
Condensed energy and heat.
That's the state of the initial, before the expansion, that's what it was. What brought that into existence?
Are you asking what brought the energy and heat? That's what you're asking?
Or what is the agent, what is the cause there?
Right, I couldn't say at all because there's no way to test that.
Right, so in your view, you can't say that God didn't do it. God is still a possibility.
Well, what you're getting at is the God of the gaps argument.
No,
It's a
no,
futile argument.
I made a deductive argument. Whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe has a cause. So by the nature of the case, if the universe is all of time, space, matter, and energy, then whatever created the universe has to be not time, not space, not matter, not energy, and has to be powerful enough to bring about a universe. And that's what traditionally theists have called God. So it's not a God of the gaps, it's a deductive argument.
No, you're making a very intelligent God of the gaps argument.
It's not
You're deducing.
God of the gaps. No, not at all.
You're saying because I cannot prove it, it must be something
not at all,
timeless
not at
that
all.
will be the theist God.
Are you familiar with what deduction is?
Narrowing down, yes.
So deduction means that we have two premises that logically follow.
Time.
Okay.
Adam, your cross-examination for origins?
I'd like to continue this conversation.
Okay.
I think it's pretty okay.
Okay.
And I'd like to give the floor to you to start.
Okay. Well, we can continue where we left off. A deductive argument is where you have premises that lead inescapably to a conclusion. So if we agree about the truth of the two premises, whatever begins to exist has a cause, and the universe began to exist, then it follows logically that the universe has a cause. And I was just wondering if you agreed with that, and if you wanted to debunk the argument, you'd have to attack one of the premises. And I'm wondering which premise you're attacking.
I'm not attacking either premise. I'm coming from the scientific notion that there is no way to scientifically test it. There is no way to scientifically prove it. However, we have a hypothesis that works. Now, if you are saying that that hypothesis is incorrect, you have to debunk the hypothesis before you make a statement or before you make a claim.
Is that a question?
No, that was a
Okay.
statement. I'll go on to my series of questions now. I'd like to move more so onto evolution,
Okay.
origins of man. Now, what is your stance on evolution?
I don't think that there's any problem with evolution and the existence of God.
You believe entirely in evolution?
They're two completely separate issues in my view. And you can be a theistic evolutionist that has nothing to do with theism. So, all for it.
What is the gap between theists that believe in evolution and do not?
Theists who, so like you're talking ID or young Earth creationists or old Earth creationists. So a theistic evolutionist would say that evolution took place on the Earth. We have common descent, we have species that show similarity, but there was a God who was purposing it. There's teleology in nature. So God purposed the ends of evolution, and that's not a scientifically provable or disprovable theory that God was involved in the process. So science cannot tell us either way, yes or no, whether God was involved. But a theistic evolutionist would say that God was involved in the process, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Are you aware of the story of Noah's flood?
Yes.
Silly question.
Yes.
Do you believe in the Noah's flood?
I believe in a local flood, but again, this topic is about theism in general, not a particular religion, so I'm not going to defend the flood. I do believe that Near Eastern accounts tell us that there was a flood of some seismic proportions in the region from the Bible, the Epic of Gilgamesh, other Sumerian texts, but again, I think that's off topic for this debate.
We're going to stick with origins. We're not going to bring any religious book into this.
Yeah, I follow. Fair enough, though. Fair enough. So, you believe that nothing can come from God?
I believe that by definition, nothing cannot do anything, because nothing is not something that we're giving the name nothing to. Nothing is the lack of anything at all.
Right, correct.
So by definition, it cannot do anything.
Could you give an example of nothing?
Nothing is that, you can't give an example of nothing, because it is nothing.
Right, correct.
It's the lack of anything at all.
Correct. So in your argument, something has always existed, or something was brought into existence by a higher power.
Well, the two competing hypotheses are the universe always existed, or it didn't. So either God or the universe is eternal. We already know that the universe isn't eternal, so it makes sense by ontological parsimony to just say that it was the cause that is eternal, not the universe itself. We already have reasons to think that the university is not the university. The university is not eternal, but the universe is also not eternal.
Okay, so it was brought into being by a higher power.
A transcendent cause, yes.
By a higher power. Okay. Where did that higher power come from exactly? Where did it originate?
Asking
Keep in
about
mind, it cannot come from.
Sure, and God by definition is uncreated. So if you're digging in the sand and you see some arrowheads, you are justified in concluding that some civilization was the one that made these arrowheads. It wasn't just the product of erosion and things like that. You don't have to know the name of the people, the name of the tribe, what they did, what they wore, but your explanation that someone did this is justifiable even though you don't have an explanation for where the people came from. And so I don't think the who made God argument subverts the cosmological argument at all.
I believe it does, and I'll tell you why. If you cannot give a reason for where God was originated, where God came from, or if he's eternal.
Well, God's eternal.
God is eternal.
Right.
God has always existed, in
Right.
your opinion.
Yeah, of
What
course.
else has always existed?
Only God, by definition.
Nothing else.
Right.
Which God?
You can make a case for logic.
Which
but
God has always existed?
The God who created the universe.
Which God was that?
Well, we're defending theism, so it's
Most certainly.
the God of classical theism, the omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, omniscient God of classical theism.
Which God?
It is the traditional God. There's only one God. There's nothing behind it.
I don't follow your argument exactly.
That's time. So, we can start now with the second examination with the topic of morality.
In 1978, a 15-year-old girl was walking to her grandfather's house when a man offered to give her a ride. She got in the car with him. He kidnapped her, raped her repeatedly, hacked off her arms at the elbows with an axe, left her to die. Although she survived, she was terrorized by this traumatic event. Her attacker served only 8 years in prison and told her during the trial that one day he would be back to finish the job. Now answer the following question: was this act wrong? It seems the answer is obviously yes. This act was wrong, evil, horrendous, morally reprehensible. Some of you might even feel outraged at this, and this is justified. This is a good response to have, because we know that some things really are wrong. The man who did this was not simply acting out of fashion or acting against some social convention. He was dead wrong. He may have thought he was right. We don't care. That doesn't change the fact that what he did was objectively wrong. We know there are objective moral facts in the world. Torturing and raping little children is wrong. Nurturing and protecting little children is good. This cries out for an explanation. Why are there moral facts? On the atheistic view, the universe is simply the byproduct of an explosion whose rapid cooling formed galaxies, and in one remote, insignificant galaxy, a chunk of rock cooled, and through millions of years of molecules in motion, human beings came on the scene. On this view, where can moral facts come from? How can we say that no one ought to rape, or torture, or abuse children? In a world that is a giant cosmic accident, where do we ground our morality? On atheism, we would not expect to find objective moral laws that are binding for all humanity. On atheism, it makes little sense to talk about moral obligations. Richard Dawkins himself says, in a universe of selfish genes and electrons, blind forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, others are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe is precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. This is the logical conclusion of atheism. But when we say that raping children is wrong, we're not simply expressing an opinion similar to I like vanilla. We mean that regardless of what anyone thinks on the planet about the issue, raping children is wrong. Let's imagine for a moment that the American Civil War never happened and that the enslavement of African Americans was practiced to this day. Let's imagine that the overwhelming majority of Americans believed that slavery was good. Even if this was the case, it would still be true that enslaving African Americans or any other members of any race is wrong. These moral truths exist independent of human minds. The philosopher Michael Roos put it profoundly: the man who says it's morally acceptable to rape children is just as mistaken as the man who says 2 + 2 = 5. Now it seems that of the two options presented before us tonight, theism and atheism, theism better accounts for the existence of moral facts. Because God is good, he is the foundation of morality. Humans are intrinsically valuable because God has conferred worth upon us. Our worth is not derived from our intellect, what society says, or our ability to function. Humans have rights because we are endowed with inalienable rights, as the founders of this nation rightly observed. Now, I'm not saying that atheists can't be moral. In fact, I know some atheists who are more moral than some theists. I'm also not saying that a person needs to believe in God in order to know and do what is morally good.
Time.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm playing technician as well. I'll start by addressing some of your remarks. You referred to Richard Dawkins. Despite the contrary belief, Richard Dawkins is not King Atheist. He's a biologist, an English biologist, and he is wrong sometimes. You also said theism better accounts for morality. Through my statement, I'll address that. Now, religion does not make you moral. Actions make you moral. Religion is actually quite immoral. Religion prevents those who love from being married. Religion tells you what you can and cannot do with your bodies. Religion starts wars. Religion causes discrimination, sexism, and classism. Religion, at least in my opinion, is immoral. Humans understand morality. Religious code does not. The idea that religion facilitates morality is a falsehood. There have been many immoral religious-bearing people. I'm not denying there are moral religious-bearing people. However, I'll highlight some of these. One example is Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden founded the terror group Al-Qaeda that committed the 9/11 attacks, killed over 2,000 Americans. As New Yorkers, we fondly remember this. He did that in the name of Islam, which is, of course, in the name of religion. This isn't an attack on Islam, this is an attack on religion. The idea that religion facilitates morality because of this is a falsehood. Another example is the current situation in the Middle East. This is a war being waged in the name of Islam. These are radicals, I will note. This war has claimed endless innocent lives. The group waging the war, ISIS, or ISIL, if you prefer, has beheaded innocent prisoners in the name of Islam, in the name of religion, if you will. This proves that religion itself holds immoral basis and can lead to terribly immoral acts. So morality is inherent. Morality does not require a code of conduct. You do not need to find morality in a book before that book, or any book, or even the belief of a God or superior being existed. People were moral. People did good deeds. However, if religion wants to lay claim to morality, they must do a better job.
Once again, I agreed with everything you said. And my argument was not that religion makes us moral. My argument was that without the existence of God, there would be nothing to ground morality. Meaning, without the existence of God, human beings have no intrinsic value. There are no moral oughts and ought-nots. So that's the question that I wanted you to address. So first, do you believe in objective morality? That is, there are moral laws that are binding on us regardless of our opinions.
I believe morality is up to interpretation in many formats. However, in certain circumstances, there are laws that are universal, such as murder, such as rape, things along those lines. However, I will note, even in the case of murder, there are exceptions.
Sure, but I'm arguing simply that there are some moral facts. So, for example, we can agree that torturing children for fun is wrong. That's a moral fact that exists in the universe.
That's an extreme example, but it certainly is.
Okay, so it's a moral fact. Now, on your view, why is that wrong? Why is torturing children for fun wrong?
That's a literal question.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Well, they're children and it's torture. I mean, can I end there? It's a degrading act. It's a hurtful act to a helpless being.
Why is it wrong to hurt a helpless being?
Because they're helpless.
What about being helpless?
Hurting in 99% of circumstances is wrong.
Why is it wrong?
Because it is not from. I'm a humanist.
Right.
Let me say that.
Mm-hmm.
As a humanist, I believe hurting other humans and not bettering humans is wrong.
Right, but that's an assumption that you're making. There's nothing in atheism. There's no way to ground that.
Are you stating that hurting humans is an assumption? The fact that hurting humans is wrong is an assumption.
I'm saying that on atheism, there's no way to ground that. So you might say evolution gives it to us, society determines it. So I'm wondering what's your grounding for that?
Contrary to what you believe, we don't dislike people.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. I think atheists can be fantastic people, and you're a fine example yourselves.
Sure.
We all have access to morality. We can all be good. We can all do moral things. The question is, where does morality come from? How are we grounding it?
It's inherent in human nature.
Why is human nature inherently good, and that we ought to protect it?
To give an example, I suppose 4,000 years ago, if you lived in a nomadic tribe, there were 8 of you. If you were to kill someone in that nomadic tribe, that would hurt your well-being, because that would be one less person to forage for food, one less person to hunt, one less person to take care of the young. So, however, that's a microcosm of an example, but hurting others hurts you, and that's an inherent trait that all humans share.
So all morality boils down to self-preservation, on your view?
I'm not saying that exactly. That was one example. Self-preservation plays into it, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
However, morality is a discussion that has been going on for ages, and the question is, what is morality? Morality is a man-made structure. However, what morality stands
I'm going to stop you there. If you say it's man-made, then in what sense is it absolute and binding for all of humanity?
What I'm saying is the word morality is man-made, and all the definitions we give to it are man.
But
however,
there are some moral facts. You conceded that in the beginning, right? But there are some things that are binding on all human beings, regardless of race, gender, time period.
Absolutely. I don't see how this plays into theism.
Oh, on naturalism, even atheists accept this, that there is no grounding for morality on atheism. Where do moral facts come from if the universe is just particles in motion that happen to arrange in this way?
Well, my response to that would be atheists, the majority, the good majority, are moral. They do not get their moral code. They do not get their moral code from theism.
No, I'm not saying people get their moral codes from God. I'm saying where and how are we grounding morality? Where does morality come from? I'm not saying how do we know it. I'm not saying that we need to believe in God to be moral. I'm saying that on your worldview, people are just chunks of matter. The universe is just particles in motion. Where do moral laws come from? Where do these oughts come from that hold to all people, all places, all times?
You're presenting it in a very direct fashion, in a very, very direct fashion. Now, moral absolutes, as I've said, are inherent. They are part of human nature.
But you, on your view, human nature is just molecules in motion. We evolved this way, we happen to be this way. Where do these moral oughts come from? You said inherent. Inherent from who? As a theist, I can say they're inherent. God put value in every single human being. On your view, that's not true. So where does that come from?
Time.
Your turn.
Well, I'll start with finishing this argument. I think
Sure.
we'll just continue this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're saying atheists believe that we are molecular obstructs in motion. We're cells in motion. We are billions of cells, a
Right.
human being in motion. And if you can repeat what you said, how because of
On atheism, where the universe, there's no supernatural, there's no moral facts that just float above somehow, where you're saying that it's inherent in human nature. What, did we evolve that? Like we picked up some moral dimension while we were evolving or something that made us intrinsically worthy? Where does it come from that humans are ends in and of themselves?
I can't tell you where morality came from. I can't tell you what molecular process happened. I couldn't tell you that. However, what I can tell you is I am non-theist. I know many non-theists. They are moral people.
Sure, yeah.
And their morality is not given by a higher power.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
I'm saying they have not received morality from God.
I'm not saying that we get our morality from a book, but I'm saying that
No, not a book. No.
Yeah.
A being, as you said, a timeless being.
How can you possibly prove that someone doesn't get their morality from God? That morality doesn't exist without God.
How can you possibly prove that we do get our morality from God?
Well, I'm saying that on the two competing worldviews, theism and atheism, on the theistic view, it makes sense for humans to be ends in and of themselves rather than means to ends. We are intrinsically valuable, regardless of whether or not we're mentally disabled, missing a limb, anything like that. If we look at animals, the animals that are elderly and disabled, those are the ones that are left and cast off to the side. But in human circles, we treat the elderly and children, even though they're the weakest, we treat them with special and utmost respect. So where does that come from? Why do we do that?
So I have a question and then a point.
Sure, yeah.
Do you believe all human beings are given this moral code? All human beings are bestowed with this morality?
I'm not saying that we're bestowed with a code. I'm saying that moral facts exist in the universe for our detection and recognition only because there's a God there.
And where are these moral facts found? How do they apply to humans?
We know them in the same way we know 2 + 2 = 4.
So you're saying that all humans are bestowed with these moral facts that are given from God.
We have a capacity for understanding moral facts.
That are given from God. All human beings have them. How do you explain serial killers? How do you explain the situation that you presented, the kidnap, rape? How do you present that argument? If you're saying that all human beings are given these moral codes, why are there exceptions?
I never said people have to live by them.
So people are aware of right and wrong.
Yes.
Everyone is aware of right and wrong.
To an extent, unless you're heavily mentally disabled.
Why do we choose to live by these codes then?
What do you mean? Which codes?
You said that there are moral codes.
Yeah.
And we don't have to live by them.
Right.
Why do we choose to?
You mean, why do we choose to do good things?
Why do we choose to be moral?
Well, people have their reasons. I think that we are made in the image of God, and so we have a desire to do that which is good, but we're also a fallen species, and we're not perfect. And so we also are selfish. We have selfish tendencies, and we do things that are not great every now and then.
So you said people are moral because we're made in the image of God. Because of that, they want to do good.
To an extent.
What about someone that is completely convinced they are not made in the image of God and are not doing good because of that?
Then we see the logical outworkings of that in people like Joseph Stalin and Hitler and other
Hitler was a Roman Catholic.
Hitler espoused Roman Catholicism, but if you read any of his writings, even a cursory glance of his writings, you'll see that he was a profound hater of anything that was religious.
Hitler was baptized Roman Catholic. Hitler was Roman Catholic, at least for a point in his life. So you can't drop the bad eggs. That's in the book.
Hitler was as Catholic as if you were to take a Mercedes-Benz symbol and put it on my Chevy and call it a Mercedes.
Well, you see, you said Stalin. Stalin didn't kill in the name of religion. He may have been an atheist, but he didn't kill in the name of religion.
Right.
I'm an atheist, but I don't go to the store because I'm an atheist.
Right.
So I present this question to you. When you do a moral deed, let's say a random moral deed, you help an old lady across the street. Why are you doing that?
Because it's a right thing to do.
Why is it the right thing to do?
Because there's a moral fact in the world that it's good to help people.
So because of this moral fact, it's good to help people. Where does this moral fact come from? Does it come from your brain, or is there a message sent to you saying you should do this?
Well, that's the way the world is, because God is good. His nature is good, and God expresses his nature to us in these moral facts. And so
what if I were to denounce God? Why would he bestow me with these moral codes?
No, but the moral facts are there. It has nothing to do with you accepting or denying God. You still have the ability to detect morality.
Okay. Now we will begin opening statements for the meaning of life.
Okay, last section. Thank you guys for bearing with us so far. With regard to meaning, humans are unique in that from a very young age, we begin asking existential questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is the meaning of life? Sometimes these questions are sincere attempts to understand a bit about the world, and sometimes they're simply asked to annoy parents and older siblings. But these questions cry out for an explanation. What answers can we offer the questions of a 5-year-old? We all know that we're going to die one day. No one lives forever. The threat of non-being is something that we must all come to terms with. Science tells us that the entire universe will also die in a massive heat death. All of reality as we know it will be gone. From where can we derive meaning in our lives? Certainly we can say that friendships and family provide meaning for our lives. But on atheism, all of this has little significance in the grand scheme of things. The entire universe is a cosmic accident that happened to allow for the existence of these chunks of matter that we call human beings. And we, like the rest of the universe, will die. We have no inherent purpose, as our existence is a sheer accident, a miscarriage of nature, if you will. The soldier who jumps on the grenade to save his comrades may have some significance to those lives that he has affected, but ultimately all of those lives will end, and the universe will not be one iota different. On atheism, it makes little sense, it makes little difference whether you live like Adolf Hitler, or Martin Luther King Jr., Joseph Stalin, or Mother Teresa. In the long run, the universe is indifferent to all of them. This led atheist philosophers like Nietzsche, Sartre, and Russell to conclude that life had no objective meaning. Russell goes further and says that the universe is purposeless and void of meaning. The entire sum of humanity is destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system. There can be no sense of objective meaning on atheism. Others, like philosopher Loyal Rue, have attempted to get around this morbid conclusion. Roux argues that as humans, we must deceive ourselves with what he calls the noble lie. Even though there is no objective meaning, value, and purpose, we must try to delude ourselves into thinking that there is meaning and purpose. He says without such lies, we cannot live. But it seems that delusion is not a great way to live. On theism, though, our outlook is much less bleak. The Westminster Catechism asks, what is the chief end of man? To glorify God and enjoy him forever. Who are you? You are a human being created in the image of God. You are valuable, worthy, and loved by the creator and sustainer of the universe. What is the purpose of your life? To love God and be loved by him. To enjoy the one for whom you were created. St. Augustine put it profoundly when he said, "O God, you have created us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you." The French mathematician Blaise Pascal similarly said, "In every man's heart there is an emptiness that only God can fill. Ultimate meaning is found in God. Without God, the universe is pointless and indifferent to every human act. The world would not be better off or worse off because of anything that we do." Now, I'm not advocating wishful thinking. I'm not saying that we ought to believe in God because God makes life more bearable or helps us avoid morbid conclusions. I'm arguing that if we accept that there is objective meaning in life, then we should also accept that God exists. It seems to me that God better accounts for meaning in life than atheism does. Atheism cannot account for value, human worth, meaning, or purpose. And it seems that theism better explains all of these phenomena. Thank you.
Well, on to meaning. This is a tough question to ask. It really is. What's the meaning of life? I don't know if anyone can really say with any certainty. But I'm sure we've all pondered it, questioned it. Most think there must be one shining reason, one true reason that we're all here. And I'm here to tell you, no, there is not. There is not one reason. You see, asking the question, what is the meaning of life, is a silly question. It's like asking, what is the color of jealousy? It makes no sense. It is a silly question. It's silly because there is no meaning to life, just like there is no color to jealousy. I challenge you all to accept that the only meaning of life is the meaning you choose to give it, not a higher power, but yourself. It is your life, after all. You are the keeper and nobody else. I know this because I've concluded through careful empirical analysis and much thought that someone is looking out for me, keeping track of what I think about things, forgiving me when I do less than I ought, giving me strength to shoot for more than I think I'm capable of. I believe they know everything I do and everything that I think, and they still love me. And I've concluded after careful consideration that this person keeping score is me. So remember, you keep the score. This is your life, after all. Live it up. Find your own meaning. Now, to respond to the statement from the theist side that the universe is pointless, I deny that. The universe holds whatever point you choose to give it, and I would hope that you would leave it in a better place. Now, instead of being threatened or having our faith threatened by the discoveries of science, we should force our beliefs to conform to the evidence of reality, rather than the other way around. And I assure you, being an atheist is much more spiritual because you get to learn the spirituality of you. Thank you.
Once again, I don't have too much to disagree with. So you agreed with me that there's no objective meaning to life, right? Because you said you can create whatever meaning you want. So it's subjective? Am I mischaracterizing? Oh, sorry.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so can you clarify your position?
Well, to think there's meaning to life is to think we understand life, is to think that we know why we're here and where we are going. We don't know where we'll be after death. We don't know where we were before death. There's no scientific proof of that, and I can't go there and come back and tell you.
Okay, would you say that your life counts for something?
What is this something?
Counts for anything. You pick.
And how do you define count?
Does your life in the great pond of time, do the ripple effects achieve anything?
The only thing I can say it for sure counts on is an attendance sheet. You live and you die. You're here for maybe 80 years. You're pretty lucky if you're here for 90. You live and you die. It's been going on for ages, ages, and ages. You live, you die. Death is the only thing certain in life.
Death and taxes.
Well, you can choose to not pay those, you know.
Okay, yes. I want to push you on this point. You said that meaning is what you give to yourself. Can you clarify?
The meaning of your life is what you choose to give it. If I make the meaning of my life to eat the most Snickers candy bars, then that's the meaning of my life. If I make the meaning of my life absolutely nothing, then there is no meaning, and I get to live as I
Right. So by that same token, the person who spends their whole life eating candy bars versus the person who spends their whole life in Calcutta serving the poor, both of them are completely equal, because there's no objective standard to judge meaning. It's whatever people make for themselves, right?
Right. Well, as I said, this is your life. Of course, as you all know, my stance is that there's no higher being judging you. You're the only one that gets to judge yourself. And if you're completely fine with eating a million Snickers bars, probably dying of diabetes, then that's fine. Okay, you're on equal playing field.
What about Joseph Stalin and Mother Teresa, or Martin Luther King Jr.? Some moral pillar.
Well, if you care to give me the two extremes, that's certainly a good question. I applaud you for that.
Well, because you said everyone can make their own meaning, and there's no objective meaning. So if there's no objective meaning, then that means they're all equal. By definition, subjective things don't have rights and wrongs.
Right. Are you asking me if Joseph Stalin was no good nor no worse than Mother Teresa?
Right. Their lives, in the grand scheme of things, on your view, they're equal.
You would have to ask the people that they affected. I cannot say.
Well, I'm saying on your philosophy, you're bringing forward this philosophy where you're saying that people can create meaning for their lives, and it's subjective, there's no objective meaning, it's whatever you make of it. Now, if that's the case, then if I choose to live my life raping, pillaging, torturing, stealing, whatever I want, and if someone else wants to go and give their lives completely serving the poor, both of those, really, in the grand scheme of things, there's no difference.
Well, you see, you're approaching this from your standpoint as a theist, where there is a right and there
I'm
is
trying
a
to
wrong.
look at it from your view.
I understand. You're approaching this as a theist, how there's a right and a wrong, and you're judged on this moral playing field. You see, I don't believe in that. I believe if you are wrong, you will pay your dues. I do believe in people going to jail. I do believe some people are good and some people are bad.
No one caught Joseph Stalin. He died pretty peacefully, actually. And so he went away and he got no retribution at all for 50 million plus lives taken.
Well, it depends on what retribution you may be talking about. I mean,
he lived a pretty good life. I mean, there were no repercussions for Joseph Stalin.
I don't see how this ties into the meaning of life.
Oh, I'm saying because you were thinking that you said that life has its own retributions, right? And I'm giving you an example where there was no retribution.
I said you make your own meaning in life.
Right, and then you said that with regard to people who do bad things, the bad things will come back and haunt them, or there will be recompense.
Well,
but for people where there was none, on your view, they just went completely unpunished.
Well, they died.
Right. And the universe
to
is
me, you see, in my standpoint, death is punishment enough. You're here for 80, like I said, possibly 90 years, and that's a gift. It's a gift no one gave you other than your mother and your father. You see, death is the great equalizer. I do not believe torturing people is correct, just as I'm sure you wouldn't. So if Joseph Stalin were to go to hell, I would say, well, it's immoral to even have a hell. I'd rather Joseph Stalin die and rot in the ground as he is. He no longer gets to take place in this life. He did not get another day. In my philosophy, that is retribution. Okay,
well, going back to this issue of making meaning for your life.
Time.
Just when I was getting to the good part.
Go ahead and finish your statement.
No, it's all right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I insist.
I insist.
Infinity. Knock on wood.
I'm interested. I'd like to hear the end.
I was just going to press you to finish your thought on Mother Teresa and Joseph Stalin. Are their lives equal in the long run?
It depends on what you mean in the long run. I am not someone who can judge everyone. As I said, I can't look back and say this person is good, this person is bad. I don't have that right, nor does anyone else in this room. Of course, I don't believe in a superior being that can. So to say this person was up here and this person is down there doesn't really make much sense. After all, they are gone now, and talking about them is, in effect, irrelevant to this life. So, I'd like to ask you, and I'd like a straightforward answer, of course. What do you believe is the meaning of life?
I believe that the meaning of life, God created us, and God created us with a desire for Him, and so that we can only be completely satisfied when we come to relationship with Him.
Okay, let's explore that.
Okay.
God created us for Him, you said.
Right.
Why?
Why?
Why does He need 7 billion followers?
Oh, I didn't say God created us for Himself. I mean, He created us so that we can enjoy Him. And so the benefit is for us, not for Himself. God's self-sufficient.
So following that, created us to enjoy Him. Can people enjoy life without enjoying Him?
Sure.
Why do they need Him?
Because we will never fully enjoy life until we do what we were meant to do.
So even the happiest person ever to be happy, let's call him Mr. Happy, he wasn't as happy as you.
I'm not talking about happiness. I'm talking about something a lot deeper. Happiness is just chemicals in your brain.
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment, having a sense of meaning, purpose, living your life knowing that the reality of God is present with you and that you experience Him day to day. You literally enjoy Him.
So, hypothetically, let's say an atheist or humanist or what have you were to discover the cure for cancer. Straight ahead cure as polio is cured.
Sure.
Gave it away for free. Would his life not be as fulfilled as yours?
No.
It would not.
Because by definition, if God created us for Himself, to enjoy Himself, then no matter what achievements we try to plug that void with, it won't be completely satisfied until God takes His rightful place.
His work would have saved millions, if not billions, of lives over the course of existence of humanity. He would have saved countless lives, gotten to see these countless lives, possibly saved family members.
These are two separate issues.
Gave it away for free.
Right. These are two separate issues.
He
In the same way that a
be-
theistic person can get married and enjoy marriage, that God is not meant to fill the void for wanting a spouse. God gave us desires for spouses. God gave us desires to overcome challenges, to help others. And these are good things that when we meet these desires, we are fulfilled in a sense. But the ultimate fulfillment is something that only God can provide. It's something that is totally sui generis. It's a different category of fulfillment.
So God gave us the desire for spouse, you said.
Yeah.
Is that all of us?
I don't know. In general, as a species, God has given us desires for members of the opposite sex.
Right. Why would He not allow the marriage of those spouses?
I think this is off topic.
This is.
I do agree. But it's a question.
Well, we're debating theism and atheism,
Right.
and this has nothing to do with theism.
Theists believe that homosexuals should...
Not all theists.
Fine, let's just go on that basis.
Well, some do. I'm not pressing you on what all atheists believe.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The meaning of life on this earth is that. What is the meaning of life with extraterrestrial beings? And is it the same?
I have no idea. I can only speak for human beings. I've yet to meet Marvin the Martian.
Well, I feel bad. He's a cool cat.
He's got a cool hat, too.
I would hope so. Because it would rhyme. Fair enough, I suppose. To wrap up, atheists will never be as fulfilled as theists.
In the same way that a painting will never be fully enjoyed or fully displayed until it does what it's meant to do, namely be on exhibit, I don't think that we will ever be fully fulfilled until we do that which we were created to do, which is know God.
Certainly, what you believe we were created to do, which is that.
Right.
But I, of course, disagree.
Right.
As I feel much fulfillment than I'm sure many other
Sure,
atheists do.
I don't doubt that, yeah.
No more questions?
Now we can begin with both sides' closing remarks.
Okay. So, thank you guys for bearing with us this long. Just to recap some of the points that were made, with the origin of the universe, we saw how whatever begins to exist has a cause. That's a principle that's relatively uncontroversial. We all accept that. Nothing cannot produce anything, because by definition, nothing is the lack of anything at all. So it follows that if the universe did have a beginning, then it had to have a cause, okay? We can speculate about what the cause is, but for sure we know that the cause would have to be immaterial, spaceless, timeless, and powerful, just by the nature of the Big Bang itself. With morality, we saw that there were moral facts, and I think that moral facts can best be explained on theism, because on theism, a God exists who can confer worth upon human beings and who can give us moral oughts and prohibitions, whereas on atheism, there can be no such oughts, there can be no moral prohibitions. It's just survival of the fittest and natural selection, that kind of thing. So that is moral law. And with regard to meaning, I can see that we can have subjective meaning on atheism. You can have fulfillment in curing cancer, having friends, but in the long run, no life is any more significant than any other, regardless of whether it's Louis Pasteur with a vaccine, Mother Teresa spending her life with orphans and the sick people, or Joseph Stalin murdering millions. In the end, everyone is the same on atheism. And so I think theism accounts more so for these phenomena that we have observed. So thank you once again for your time listening to my boring rants. And I thank the participant and Emma and everyone else for putting this debate together, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you all for listening to our debate, and thanks for coming out again. And I'd like to leave with just a few closing remarks. Whether you may be theist or atheist, whatever you really may be, Pastafarian, it doesn't matter. I hope you all find meaning in life. I hope you all find what's right in life and enjoy life based on your standards. My main objection with theism is it's a code. It's a code. As he said, no atheist would be as fulfilled as a theist, which I, of course, adamantly deny. Those are absolutes. I would challenge you all to not live your life by absolutes. Do not live your life based on someone whom you've never met's opinion on you. Base your life on your opinion on you, which I hope is good, because you all seem like good folks. And don't be afraid. Do not ever be afraid to speak your mind. I'm an atheist. There's not a lot of atheists that volunteered to do this. However, I know plenty. If you're an atheist in the crowd, I could just say, don't be afraid. There's a lot more of us out there, and speak your mind. If you're a theist, I absolutely respect you. I just do not respect your beliefs. Take that as you may. But we're friends, believe it or not. So, in conclusion, my opinion is that you should live your life based on however you feel you should live your life. If you feel you must live theistically, just do not force it on others. Do not make others conform. Do not harm others. Let us live in peace. And do not be afraid of the big man in the sky that you're never going to meet, or will not meet in this lifetime. So thank you very much.
Now we will take a 10-minute short intermission. Like I said, the index cards with pens are up here. Please feel free to ask any questions you may want to ask regarding the topics that were presented here tonight. So we'll be back in 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you. Since Paul has started, we're going to let Adam take the first question, and then there will be a 30-minute response to 30-second, excuse me, response to the answers to the questions.
We want to get home tonight.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back.
Okay.
So,
Adam, you said we are the product of amino acids assembled to give rise to life. What scientific test or experiment proved that?
well, that's an interesting theory. You're asking how chemistry can turn into biology, basically. And we've been testing that. We've been fairly successful turning chemistry into biology. You know, for example, reproducing human organs and things like that. That plays a lot into that. The amino acids really can be recreated in a lab, and it's chemistry to biology.
There has been no evidence of turning pure non-life into life. With taking organs and things like that, we can clone, but that's from pre-existing life. abiogenesis has been ruled out and ridiculed by the scientific community. So the origin of life is still a question that we're trying to understand. And it's not been settled by the scientific community by any stretch.
Paul, if God is so good, why doesn't he stop suffering?
That's the age-old question, right? The problem of evil. I think a couple of responses can be given. One, God thinks that free will is an intrinsic good. And so in order to have any meaningful relationships, meaningful love, there has to be the possibility of not following through. Has anyone ever seen the movie The Stepford Wives? Yeah. So the premise of the movie, you have the option of moving to a town where instead of your wife, you can take a brain chip, put it in her brain, and she automatically becomes the perfect wife, makes you sandwiches, does exactly what you want to do. But is that really the kind of wife, the kind of spouse that you want? Someone who does something only because they're programmed to? I don't think that that's the most accurate or complete picture of love. For love to exist, there has to be the possibility of not loving, and so God has bestowed us with free will. And with regard to natural disasters and natural evil, I think the doctrine of the fall, God has created humanity, but humanity has fallen from grace, and so the world is no longer in a state of intrinsic good, and so we suffer from earthquakes and things like that. And notice that earthquakes and all natural disasters are only bad when they harm human life. There's nothing intrinsically bad about two plates of the earth colliding into each other. It's only bad when it does damage to human life. And so we're presupposing human worth. And that's something that we can only say is true on theism, not on atheism.
Well, I think you danced around the question a little bit, although you grazed on it. This will probably go back to where I spoke about morality, how religion is immoral, and God himself is the crowning immoral. If God were almighty, he could stop tragedy. He does not. Therefore, you must assume that God does not wish to stop tragedy. Anyone that does not wish to stop tragedy is immoral. An immoral God falls in on itself. Therefore, there is no God.
Time. Adam, how did you come to the conclusion that there is no God?
Well, that's a damn good question. I was born, never baptized. I was Christian for many years, looked into Judaism, and then became atheist, then turned into a Tibetan Buddhist. That ended about 2 years ago, and now I'm just a humanist. I came to the conclusion that there's no God, partly because of what I just said, because he would stop tragedy, but also because logically it doesn't make sense. Heaven and hell do not make sense. The fact that God could control everything, put everyone in their place, create everyone, it seems like he's a very busy man. I don't know anyone that has that much time on their hands. It doesn't make sense to me. That's not an argument, those are just my beliefs.
Well, God is not bound by our constraints of time, so God doesn't require effort. God doesn't require time moving in consecutive events in order to work. God is immaterial, and so he's not bound by the spatio-temporal continuum, so he can do whatever he likes. And the objection of heaven and hell isn't really an objection against the existence of God. It's an objection against a particular view of God's justice. But there are different views on that within different religious traditions. So I don't think that we've seen any successful argument against the existence of God.
Time.
Yeah.
I have a add on to that, just for what I forgot to say, I guess. You have to prove God before I disprove God. That's a basis of debate. Now, I could create a God in my mind right now, write him down in a book, say he doesn't apply to any laws that we apply to, and we cannot disprove him whatsoever. 2,000 years from now, people worship him. That does not make him real.
Time. Paul, if the universe was created by a being that has always existed, why cannot the universe has always existed cutting out an extra step?
That's a fantastic question, and that's exactly what atheists did for thousands of years, until the scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century, with Einstein's theory of relativity, the equations of George Lamarck, the observations of Edwin Hubble, the detection of the microwave background radio by Penzias and Wilson, the Arvin-Board-Guth-Blinken theorem published in 2003. All of these the science of cosmology never existed until the 20th century because of all of these breakthroughs. So we had two options: either the universe was created and God created, or the universe was eternal. We now know that because of the scientific evidence, the universe being eternal is not tenable. So we have to explain it by an outside cause.
My response to that is just because science cannot explain it does not mean that your cause is the actual cause. Science cannot explain a lot of things. Science is, believe it or not, in its infancy. Electricity is only a few hundred years old. Science is very new. Come back and talk to me in 1,000 years. Well, I'm going to be dead. But come back and talk to somebody in 1,000 years, and they'll probably give you an answer close to that. Just because science can't explain it doesn't mean you can fill in the gaps.
Adam, if you believe morality exists, what scientific proof do you have for that?
Morality isn't science.
And he's right. Science does not tell us about morality. Science describes things about the natural world, but it cannot prescribe behavior. Science tells us what is the case. We see and we observe certain patterns of behavior, but it can't tell us we ought to do this and we ought not to do this. So science is not in the equation when it comes to talking about morality. So we agree on that.
Paul, how do you explain morality in other species? For example, a jaguar's mother and a gazelle's cub, or a dog crying over a gazelle's cub, or a dog crying over a dead owner.
I think the use of morality when applied to species outside of humanity is a little bit confused. Human beings are the only species that have moral acts. And when I mean that, I mean when a shark forcibly copulates with another shark, that's not rape, right? But when a human forcibly copulates with another human, that's rape. There's a moral dimension to human acts that is absent from animal behavior. And that's because of our being created in the image of God, our being placed with special worth and value by God. So animal behaviors that might seem altruistic or abiding by the laws of reciprocity are just the products of biological conditioning, tendencies to do this and that. They're not really morally praiseworthy. So they're not equivalent.
I think morality in animals sounds pretty funny, but I suppose it's something that could be explored in future years. Obviously, there's not a lot of science on that right now, because we are still debating and arguing over what morality in humans is. Once these debates no longer have to happen, we'll move on to that pressing subject that we're all dying to know.
Adam, how do you explain that 80% of the world believes in some form of theism?
Okay. Let me think here. If I could get 10 people in a room, I could tell 8 of those people that, let's get 10 people in a room. Okay, they've never been to Asia. I say to 8 of them, you know, every place in Asia is communist. They believe it. I'm a prestige man. I walk in with a suit. Why wouldn't they believe me? I tell the other 2 that Asia is a democratic place for the most part. I put those 10 people in a room, quiz them. 8 of them are terribly wrong. 2 of them are right. It's possible to be wrong. The majority can be wrong. The majority is actually usually wrong. Just because majority of people believe in religion, that doesn't mean squat. What was that?
Did you say you don't believe in absolutes?
Explain how that ties into that.
You said that the majority of people are wrong. We have an absolute.
You can ask your question after.
That's a fact.
We're done.
That's a
Paul,
fact.
your
To respond.
yes, your response.
Actually, I agree with what Adam said. I don't think that the fact that 80% of humans accept theism is an argument for theism. Again, people in the majority, that doesn't make something right. We've seen many instances of where the majority was wrong in history, and that's led to many tragic episodes like slavery and Holocaust. So majority doesn't necessarily make things right. We understand what's right by looking at arguments and evidence and experiencing the world around us. So I think we're agreed on that point.
Time. Paul, there are more than 400 planets scientists have found that may have life. How can God be everywhere in this universe?
When we say God is everywhere, we're not saying that God resides in physical space. We're saying God is everywhere precisely because he does not reside in physical space. He's not constrained by space and time. He's not an object. He's immaterial. So he doesn't exist in the 4D space-time world. So it's even a confusion to say that God is physically present on 400 planets. That's not the way that theists talk about God's existence. God is omnipresent in the sense that he's everywhere. He's not spatio-temporally located. He's not a material or time-constrained being.
Well, with astronomy, there's billions and billions and billions of other planets out there. I assure you, none of them have heard the word of God. However, I do assure you, once NASA makes public that there's beings on X planet, there's going to be missionaries there.
Adam, how do you account for the laws of logic?
How do I account for the laws of logic? Can I ask who asked that question? I want them to explain it.
I can explain it. On atheism, the universe is just particles in motion that happen to explode and everything cooled down. Where do laws of logic that are normative come from? Meaning the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle, 2 + 2 = 4, even mathematics. Where do these come from? Why does the universe fit so nicely on top of logic and math?
Well, these laws of logic are developed through hundreds of years, much like evolution of the human species. Laws of logic are much like morality. They're inherent. Our brains can process that. We're pretty lucky to have brains that can do this. The laws of logic, first of all, are man-made. However, are inherent, as we know them.
Laws of logic are not man-made. They transcend the human mind, and everyone, it's something that we just understand about the world. You cannot say that X is not X in the same sense and in the same sense. Adam is not an atheist and not an atheist at the same time and in the same sense. So we have to pick one of those two. Two contradictory things cannot be true in the same time and at the same sense. That's not a rule that we came up with. It's a rule that the universe pushes down upon us to constrict our thinking into certain logical ways. So we didn't come up with it, we simply recognize it or detect it.
To clarify that statement, the laws of logic being man-made, I do, of course, mean, and I agree with you. The laws of logic being man-made are, of course, in my opinion, you have all these ideas, these logical ideas that now we know as the laws of logic. Sometimes some guy, some probably smart guy got together and said, we're going to call these the laws of logic.
Time. Paul, how do you explain the change in morals over time?
I don't think that morals themselves, as in the moral facts, changed. It was always the case that raping children was wrong. If societies before decided to not live by that or not accept it, it means they were wrong. It doesn't mean that the moral value changed and evolved with time. So the moral facts were always there. 2 + 2 always equaled 4, even before humans were around. It's just a fact of the world. So these things don't acquire more meaning or evolve with the human species as we do. They are placed upon us. And there's an argument to be made that God is the center of logic. He's the locus of logic. So I think these things are, morality and logic go hand in hand. They're not some things that evolve. They're facts that exist in the mind of God. And we only detect them. We don't create them. They don't evolve.
I defer to respond.
Adam, how do you explain the complexity found in nature? Cellular process, tissue, organ systems that need to function with precision, where evolution would prohibit biological viability.
Well, I assume you're asking me, how do I portray that through evolution and not supreme being? Well, the only thing I can tell you is that evolution, nature really, is far more complex than your brain can probably fathom, and mine too, and the best scientists as well. Nature was here before us. We don't get to define nature. Nature is what nature is. Nature may be complex, it may work in mysterious ways. We have billions of atoms and cells inside of our body that all combine to make this working machine that can stand up here and talk about our ideals. Things are very complex, and odds are no one's ever really going to understand them.
I'll give you even one better. The design and complexity that we see in human and biological systems pales in comparison to the fine-tuning that we see in physics, especially the physics that was present at the Big Bang, the constants, dozens and dozens of constants that scientists have said. Fred Hoyle said that greater intellect has monkeyed with physics. Someone has went and gone and turned the dials, made sure that they were set to specific sets of gravity and electromagnetic force, nuclear magnetic force, things like that, that even allow biology, chemistry, physics to take place. So a stronger argument would be from physics, not from biology.
Paul, you said God is good. How would you explain why he created atheism or people to question him?
Again, I think the response goes back to free will. God, if you have a child, you don't force the child to love you or even acknowledge your own existence, right? If you have a teenager, how many of us when we were teenagers wanted to deny the existence of our parents, right? Or at least their authority in our lives. So God has given us the ability to reject him and to know him. And God's interest is not just to have us believe in him as a piece of, like metaphysical furniture in our understanding of the world. He wants us not just to believe in him, but to know him and to have a relationship with him. And so he leaves the door open for disbelief, unbelief, lack of belief. And he lets people choose the way that they want to live their lives.
He said that God wants us to have a relationship with him. Is it lonely? Is he a lonely guy? Or Anyway, my response really is, if God were to create us to have free will, of course he'd be creating us to be evil, or have the possibility to be. And of course he engineered this place called hell, which I'm sure you've all heard of, to send those people. So in short, God created humans. God gave free will to humans. God created a great place to go if you obey him, and a terrible place to go if you disobey him. And he gave you the choice. So, God chose to put people in hell.
Time.
Can I respond really quick?
15 seconds.
15 seconds. If you're pursuing a girl and she doesn't like you, then the gentlemanly thing to do is to just give up and let her go her own way. So if you don't like God in this life, what makes you think that you would enjoy spending an eternity with him in heaven? So hell is simply the absence of God.
Are you claiming that hell is a reasonable place to live?
I'm saying if you don't want to live with God, then you get your wish, which is the absence of God.
Which is hell.
We're not talking about fire or anything like that, just the absence of God, absence of all that is good.
This can continue after. I'm going to get to our two last questions. Adam, what event in your life made you believe that there is no God?
Thinking.
30-second response.
Oh, you're deferring? Oh, I can't answer that question because I'm not an atheist.
Okay. Paul, isn't belief in evolution contradicting?
Contradicting belief in God? I don't think so. I see no reason to think that an evolutionary process, a mechanism by which species evolve from simpler to more complex, somehow disproves the existence of the agent who brought about that mechanism, or the agent who brought into existence the world in which the mechanism can work. So I don't think that there's any contradiction there. If there is, someone can point it out to me. There's no explicit contradiction, I don't think.
That concludes our question and answer session. Thank you. Of the universe, morality, and meaning. From both sides, atheism and theism. It's now your turn to decide. Maybe walk away with a different outlook, with a different worldview, something to think about. The best part is, you get to decide. I want to thank all of you for your support. Without you, we would not be able to put on events like these. Please be on the lookout for Basic's next event next year. We do take suggestions for what this campus wants to see. Like Basic College Ministries on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as New York Apologetics. If you'd like to know more about Basic College Ministries, we have an info table right out front. Again, thank you very much and good night.